NNPCL Limited CEO briefs President Tinubu on Abuja, Kaduna, Kano gas pipeline project, says it is ready to proceed on the next phase.
We've been able to successfully complete the welding of the main line of the AKK.
Federal government assures on completing 4 legacy road projects across the country.
NDLEA arrests notorious drug trafficker and 3 others.
And on Good Morning Nigeria, today we shall examine Nigeria's economic development in 2025.
Now, in less than 72 hours, 2025 will be history as we usher in the year 2026. For Nigeria, much can be said for some critical sectors, but the economy remains one of the major talking points.
Indeed, Nigeria's economy at the start of the year was unpredictable, with high inflation rates, weak consumer demand, and low business activity, all as a result of subsidy removal and, of course, the tweaking of the exchange rate.
Of course, yes. And for experts, these defining challenges constrained our consumption, but as the year progressed, the rebasing by the National Bureau of Statistics of Nigeria's gross domestic product and consumer price index opened up another perspective of economic indicators.
Within the year, the NBS revealed the economy grew by 3.98%, recorded in the third quarter, with the services sector dominating by 53.02%. But beyond the figures, I mean, some people are not too good with it. Nigeria's budget of restoration proved resilient, with the year ending by an inflation rate of 14.45%, aligning with the president's projected figure of 15% at the end of 2025.
Figures, like you say, and for the Monetary Policy Committee meeting in November, market watchers were surprised by the retention of interest rate at 27%.
Now, but the pleasant surprises unveiled mid-year with the removal of Nigeria from the global watchdog Financial Action Task Force grey list, signaling a boost for investors' confidence.
Indeed, a boost for investors' confidence. And what others were the signing of Tax Reform Act, banks recapitalization, and the reduction of Nigeria's dependence on fuel imports, among others.
It's been a year of ups and downs, but analysts are already projecting a more inclusive policy direction. Henry John, it's the first episode of the week as we count down to the end of the year 2025. I'm super excited, Jumai.
How time flies.
No, I'm just being optimistic, looking forward to 2026. It's been a brilliant year.
Yeah, we pray so that 2026 may be kind to us. And I'm Juma Yusuf. Well, we'll find out shortly on these economic milestones and projections in 2026. You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Many thanks, Timothy Yusuf, for the background report. Now, joining us for the conversation in the studio is Professor Ken Ife, an economic policy expert. Many thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Compliments of the season.
Same to you. Thank you, and good morning, Nigerians.
Also here for the conversation is Dr. Aliyu Ilyas, an economist. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me. Good
Compliments
morning.
of the season.
Same here. Good morning, Nigeria.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
We also have all regulars on the program today. And joining us from our Kaduna studio, we have Dr. Ishawa Ango, the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academics, Kaduna State University, and Professor of Finance and Entrepreneurship. Good to have you join us. Compliments of the season.
Morning. Compliments of the season. Good morning, Nigerians.
Joining us. Well, let's begin from here in the studio. Professor Ken Ife, let's have your assessment of the economy in 2025 and what, in your opinion, what were the major highlights for you in the year under review?
Yeah, 2 major ones. Sector one is the macroeconomic gains, pain and then gains. Because we had to, who took the pain, but there are substantial gains. Then there are sectoral ones. I will only talk about two of the sectors because we're going to come back. I will only talk about agriculture and oil industry. Those two, remarkable. Now, on the macroeconomic scale, always put your mind back to what the president said on the day he was brought in. He said subsidy is gone, and subsidy actually went. But unfortunately, he could only lay hands on 50% of it. That's why he couldn't do all he would have liked to do. World Bank said the other 50% was trapped by NNPC in their inefficient operations. But we'll get to that. Then also, he embarked on, the second one, of course, was no subsidies. It's gone. The second one was unification of the currencies. And it was a terrible thing that we had so many different currency rates operating at the same time. That has been sorted out to the point that people are no longer it used to be a very long queue with central bank. If you're looking to remit money or pay for raise letters of credit, and you wait for months and months and months. Now nobody even goes there because sometimes you buy the money even cheaper from black markets. Sometimes and the difference is neither. So they've left central bank alone to focus on price stability, which is a good thing actually. And then in that price stability, they've done a great job. Beyond just aligning the currencies, the rates, but also they went back to deal with the core mandate of the bank, which is price stability. They fought inflation to a standstill. They hiked the rates to bring foreign portfolio investment. They did so many things, but they fought it. But there were other things that helped. Agriculture, so we'll come to that. Then there are other areas, for example, if you're not doing well, all the rating agencies won't come back and be saying, yeah. All of them are saying, yeah, because Fitch rating has improved, Standard & Poor has improved, which is the other one? I forgot the name. There are three major ones, but they've all improved. Now, the balance of payment has also reversed from negative to positive, about $6.8 billion. The balance of trade has also reversed from negative to positive, about 6.6 trillion naira. I mean, these are no mean achievement, because when you look at GDP, which is also going up, there are four strands, 4 pillars of GDP. We have the balance of payment, you have consumer, household consumption, which is about 68 to 70%. You have government consumption. Government is always borrowing money anyway, so they'll keep going up. Then you have investment. So the new tax reform affects two of them, the industry and then the household, and all of them are all pointing up. So all the indicators that are going to keep going up and up and up. And so on that particular one, the other reforms, a lot of reforms have taken place. And one of the reforms is, I'm so happy that he has decided to implement the PIA. The PIA took 20 years of fighting to get it. So Buhari signed it and just quietly left and let the new man deal with it. And you've seen the battle. Battle line was drawn. And then we fought that battle. And I think God has listened to our prayer. 1 million target extra on production. We've gone to 1.8. It used to be under 1 million. Then there is also the refining process. Refining growth, 19%. You look to crude production also went up. If you look at the percentages, they're all going up and up. 20% in the second quarter, now 5% in the third quarter. So what we used to hear for the last 15 years is no oil, non-oil, non-oil. Now, what is the meaning of non-oil? What do you mean by non-oil? It has now shown, implementing the PIA, that there is business in the oil sector. Because they want to make here a refining hub to produce and sell to all over. Dangote has shown that it's been done. If you go to Texas, you have 32 refineries in one place and 5,000 petrochemicals producing for export. But for Nigeria, they say, look away. We're looking away. What do you mean by look away? So it's possible that we can generate big wealth from this sector. And that is what we are seeing happen today. Then the agriculture, correctly, it says state of emergency. And we are seeing the result. Agriculture dragged down the inflation because they were posted from 37%, 39%, they are doing 10%. Of course, there was rebasing of both the GDP and interest rates, inflation, they were rebased. But that rebasing took only 10% off, but they still brought it down. And why? because we've gone to all year season farming. We're now using digital technology to share input, even loans, micro loans. So the minister is doing fantastically well in the agricultural sector, and he could do more. By the time he releases all these tractors and the inputs are getting to people, because I keep asking the minister, what is the biggest challenge? He says his biggest challenge is the same challenge I ask every minister in the past, getting this thing to touch the ground in order to reach the last mile. And that's what he has done.
Many thanks, Professor Ife, for your opening comments. Of course, we'll get back to you. You said ratings have improved, but of course, the question is, has the life of the average Nigerian improved with all of these ratings? Of course. So we'll get to that. Let's talk to Dr. Ilias now. Listening to Professor Ife, it looks like it's been a rosy year, but I would like you to, objectively describe Nigeria's economic performance in 2025. Would you say recovery, stagnation, or decline?
Right. I think, yes, recovery, because if you look at it generally, I think it's a good thing when you look at 2024 that we're actually coming from and see what's happening in 2025. We say yes. In fact, it's quite geometric in nature. But let's look at the pains of this achievement as well. If you look at it critically, you see that the central bank is making sure that inflation actually reduces, and we've seen that result 8 months consecutively. However, the challenge there is that if you look at it, there's a trade-off. And it's as if we actually sacrifice to an extent growth because we want to bring about inflation, the considerable level which we have actually achieved. And what are the pains? If you look at the manufacturing sector, you see that the only contribution of manufacturing sector is about 7.6% to the economy. And if you look at that, that is not enough to describe a country. But what brings about that is that if you look at our NPR, is about 27% now. It's quite it's a negative one, so to say, because it's quite discouraging to an extent for our business to actually go to the bank and borrow. And if you look at the last MPC meeting, we see that there's a reduction, even though it's not significant. It's in the corridor as well. That shows that CBN also recognizes that there's a pain and there's challenge in that area for people to actually borrow. So for us to actually create the expected employment that we're actually looking at, for us to have the economy that we expect, I think that area of interest rate must be looking at critically. And going forward, we are hoping, because of the gain of the inflation reduction, we are hoping that it's going to reduce to an extent that it will make Nigerians to want to go into business the more. It will help the small businesses to actually want to do business the more. So these are some of the pay. But in terms of gain, the gain is very enormous, because if you look at the macro benefit of it, you look at the foreign reserve, and you look at the stability of naira to dollar, you see that yes, this is a good one. However, it also becomes a deflator, because if you look at the economy very well, no matter how beautiful everything is, if that value of naira to dollar, we don't have a considerable one, say 1,000, 1,002, or below 1,000, that's when we see most things are reflected. Then the one I also want to talk about is the area of transportation. If you look at it generally, we've not seen considerable reduction in transportation. And when the cost of transportation is not reducing, it will reflect in household buying and in the logistics. So the major problem I think Nigeria is having now is logistics problem in terms of supply chain. And to really solve the problem of supply chain, you have to look at it from the agricultural sector. Because I could have produce in my farm somewhere in Kebbi, and there's it for me to bring it down to Abuja, to Lagos. You look at the cost implication and how it will transfer to the last consumer. I think these are the areas we need to look at it critically going forward to 2026.
Indeed, transportation has not come down. Even this December, people have been complaining a lot, and people have not felt it. Let's bring in Professor Ishao and go into this conversation. And we would also like you to have an assessment of the 2025 economic development. And one question I need to ask you is, we had a lot of reforms in 2025. Are these reforms holding? Is growth inclusive? And are Nigerians feeling tangible improvements? Because all these numbers we're calling has to reflect in the lives of Nigerians. Are they feeling the tangible improvements in their way of life?
Good morning once again. The reforms are working. working in a way that we can see the reform started 2 years ago or thereabout, 2023, with the removal of subsidy, and then subsequently the merger of exchange rates and all that. Now, these reforms are there. They are really impacting. We are seeing that in form of price stability. The inflation month on month, year on year is reducing, and it has held on for so many months, so that is clear. And then we're also seeing it in terms of GDP growth and other things that have been mentioned earlier. However, some of these reforms are coming too many at a time, and too much, to the average Nigerian. I mean, as in they are costing the average Nigerian so much. We are reforming, and the reform effect, while some are very positive, but some are very painful to the Nigerian. Now, on the issue, I will wait to hear Professor Ken's submission about agriculture, because he seems to be upbeat about it. I am a farmer myself. I've said it over and over and over again here. Prices of foodstuffs have come down, but not that much reform has happened in the agricultural sector. I stand to be corrected. I will not say much here. We'll wait, at least listen to the erudite scholar, about this, But reforms are working, but there are so many reforms, and so many reforms coming all at the same time, and the average Nigerian is actually feeling the pinch. Imagine, when you are changing so many things at the same time, the impact is much on the Nigerian, and that is the problem. And I think, sincerely, like what the last speaker said, there are issues to do with logistics, there are issues to do with transportation, there are issues to do with pricing. Those are realities, those are facing the average Nigerian. But what is most important to me that I've seen in 2025 is stability of exchange rate reasonably, and then the lower, if you like, or the stability and reduction in general inflationary levels. And I think these are commendable, and I think this should be commended.
All right, many thanks, Prof, for your opening comments. You have, talked about the agricultural sector, and you say, well, prices coming down, but not based on reforms. I'm sure Professor Kenny wants to respond to that. But, you see, when you spoke earlier, Prof, you talked about GDP growth becoming, much better. Some would say it's positive on paper. Because incomes of the average Nigerians, or if you like, income of average Nigerian is falling. Now, can you explain why there's a disconnect between the GDP figures and what the average Nigerian feels?
Okay. When I talked to NESG, when they did their stuff, I said, look at the growth indices. Great, 4.2%, that. Look at all the macroeconomic indices, all positive, but none of this growth is inclusive because it's not resulting on employment. It's not resulting on poverty reduction. It's not improving the standards of living. So that's the disconnect that we are talking about. So I said, okay, I know we are talking about how we will grow to dominate African economy, the Africa Continental Free Trade. I said, forget trade and services, because they're all right. They're doing their best. The banking sector is all over the place. The finance, fintech, we're even taking over some banks, Money Point, they are taking over some banks. So our creative and cultural industries, they're doing their best. All these other, but let's face trading goods. What do you have to export there? So that's why I brought them down. So I said, the growth that we need in this country is export-led growth. It is export-led growth strategy that for China removed 400 million people out of poverty. And over 200 million people from Indonesia, Malaysia, South Korea were removed out of poverty because of export-led growth. But what we have here is import dependency. Import dependency. Anywhere you are import dependent, it means that anything that happens outside the world in global will affect you. It doesn't matter whether it's COVID-19 or whether it's American subprime crisis or whether it's a Russian war with it. It doesn't matter. Whatever it happens there affects you because you just import the inflation. And imported inflation is a big one for us. So the fact of the matter is that when you are exporting raw material, you are exporting your jobs and you're importing poverty. So that is the connect. We have an import-dependent economy, you're exporting raw material and importing poverty. So in that circumstance, you can still have paper growth showing that it doesn't connect to the reality on the ground. It doesn't, okay, when the banks are making money, whether they're printing the money or ICT and all that, do they produce food that you're going to eat? They are doing well, but they don't generate jobs. They don't create food that your stomach infrastructure. So we need to take that on its stride. So that was why I said, okay, if you look at what is going on in the oil, we've now brought back oil onto the equation, because what they were saying, people were in their comfort zones and saying, forget oil, non-oil. The drum that was beating is non-oil. I don't know. Now that we have come to it, hasn't the price of fuel collapsed? Look at all the benefits. Somebody invested $20 billion, another $20 billion is coming. Somebody is investing $50 billion new refinery in Ondo. Bua is building in the... Can you imagine what Nigeria is going to turn to in the next 2 years? Dangote is doubling his capacity. This place will become the refining hub for the whole of Africa. So it's transformation and it's creating a lot of jobs. So you see that. And so when we are looking at what food has done in this respect, the minister called me like somewhere like about 8 months ago, 9 months ago, and was talking about, can we hurry up and plant cassava in the north before the 1 more week? I said, forget that. All season farming. Let us go anywhere you can see water body, either in a well or in a borehole or in a river or in a lake. Bring empty bags of old cement bags. Let's plant there and surround there. And then homestead farming. People are doing things in their backyard. So you're not about Boko Haram that you can't go to. No, do something around. And that is transforming. People are harvesting what they have around them. And then you have the biggest challenge about hitting the last mile. That is the input going there. NIN has solved that. Now you know who the person is because you've got his data, and then you can give it to him. And that is the transformation that we are seeing. So people are getting the input. Not the input will come 3 months after you have finished farming, if we're planting. Or this will happen. So it's now in sync. And we are getting the results, and we can do more. So it's not just, and then you have dry season farming. You saw huge resources go to dry season farming, which means it's not just 1 month. We are tackling this problem, and that's why I said I doff my hat for the Minister of Agriculture. He is not voting for the authority. He is doing the work right there and then. Okay, price. I make gari from cassava. We have over 2,000 hectares of cassava, but I sold gari some months ago at 60,000 naira per bag, 50 kg bag. But honestly, in this last 1 month, 20,000 naira, that's what
it has dropped.
That's what, but I have to still do it because all the farmers growing for us, if we don't take off their thing, next year they will all switch off from cassava.
So are you saying that
so you can see, one, you have to have an organization, which is why you don't let them down. 2, you have to be prepared to weather the storm. You weather the storm by investing more on processing and going up the value chain, so that even as the price crashes, you are still making some little thing by higher value addition. So by this equation, that there is now a sitting minister there that is driving this. And then for the second, I have to say this, after Obasanjo, this president gives me hope that there is a government in the country. He's tackling the problem, we're getting results, but there are areas of weaknesses, so it's in plenty. But at least there is a semblance of governance.
So are you saying that farmers, in 2025 were more, impacted by government?
No, I'm telling you, I'm giving you the evidence.
You're giving me the evidence, but
the evidence is that there are some food items that are still high, but by and large, I live near a market next to Taco Market. I go there almost every day to check the price of tomato. Remember when tomato was 18,000? Now it's at 4,000. Same basket. Onions, when it was 12,000. But I'm seeing them, even the goat that I buy, I can see prices coming down furiously in certain certain of some of the items. But there are some items that are persistently high. But don't blame it all on agriculture, because there are some people that are hoarding things. There are some imports. So I'm only telling you the one that I have witnessed, the one that I'm involved in.
All right.
Okay,
Thanks.
yes, let's bring in Mr. Aliu into this conversation now. Would you say that Nigeria's economy has become more resilient today than it was at the beginning of 2025?
I think that the answer is yes, is in affirmative. I think we have put all what we can put together to make sure we are getting better. However, there is a problem of demand side. In as much as we see everything coming down, the price of rice, like Prof rightly mentioned, everything in the market. But the problem of demand side is a problem, because you find out that things are coming down in the market, but the purchasing power of Nigerian seem to be the problem. And that's why, I went back to say, you could have 1,000 naira, before you could find yourself buying a plate of food at 1,000 naira. But I can tell you 3,000 naira is what you have to manage. And that's the problem of, the weak purchasing power of Nigerians. And it's quite glaring. And that's why I said government needs to do more, because in as much as things are getting better, we also need to look at the purchasing power of Nigerians, because, there is a kind of difference between what is actually happening and the lag time for it to get implemented. If you ask me, I'll say yes, maybe first quarter of 2026, we begin to see the result of those things, because those macroeconomic, indicators that is positive has not yet reflect to an extent to what Nigeria is actually looking at, because of some of what we call a legacy problem, like, infrastructure deficit, inequality, these are the things that government needs to actually create a program that will look at. Then when you look at agriculture, I recall that, as Prof rightly said from Kaduna, the minister is actually trying, but sometimes there's need to get to those farmers themselves, because I recall the impact, some level of impact of anchor borrower, which farmers from their comfort zone will say, yes, this is what I'm actually getting. So in as much as we have aggregated, at the top there, it's actually working. We want it to trickle down more. And we won't blame the federal government only for this. We have to go to sub-nationals as well. What are the state governors actually doing? If you look at the fiscal performance, I would say I will score the states, the sub-national, more than the federal government. But sometimes they also need to focus on actually looking at this sector to actually have, a program for, because sometimes if you don't have a program that actually encourage people. Recall when President declared state of emergency on food security, he actually said that he's going to work with different states. But for someone like us, we said, okay, you want to work with states. It's not easy. Land does not really belong to the federal government.
Belongs to the states.
So you have to guide all these states along as well. So I think that's where we are seeing the gap. And I'm sure if we can actually close it, the more Nigeria will benefit
Talking
from what
about
we're
closing
seeing.
gaps, what
Yes.
about small and medium-scale enterprises? Would you say that they fared well in 2025? And speak about the interest rates, all through the year.
Right.
The interest rate, is it meant to protect the economy and suffocate businesses? What exactly did he do in 2025?
If you look at my opening remark, I said it's as if we are sacrificing growth to an extent because we want to achieve inflation, reduction in inflation. And that's why I simply said, if interest is at where it is, definitely small business, which some of us actually play in, will find it difficult to actually breathe. Because if there's no access to credit, access to finance, it's pretty difficult for small businesses. It's not even issue of business, small business. Even the big businesses are actually finding it difficult to actually operate, because you cannot going to pay such interest rates and you find it easy, to actually operate in those businesses. So people are actually looking at, yes, the economy is getting better. Let's wait and see so that we can actually know where to actually live. Perhaps this economy also encourages, if you look at the GDP critically, you see that the service sector is taking about 53% of it, because it's much more of portfolio in some areas. It's easy for you to bring your money and put it in the stock exchange and get money. But the question is that, can that really give us the employment we are looking for? The employment we are looking for can only come in the area of industry, manufacturing sector, and the area of agriculture. So that's why government must also look at that critically. Yes, we want to get people employed, we want to get the economy more running, we must focus on, and that's why I also said, if you look at the GDP itself, the component of manufacturing is only about 7.5% or 7.6 rather. So these are why we must look at that area, and this falling more into the subnationals.
Many thanks, Dr.
It's falling
Elias.
more into the subnationals. Indeed,
Let's get to Professor Ango now. Professor Ango, I do not know if you're comfortable with the explanation given by Professor Ike as regards the agricultural sector and how it has performed, but I'd like you to speak about our debt profile and the rate of borrowing in the year 2025. Would you say that the figures, I mean, talking about debt servicing, talking about what was borrowed and all of that, would you say we're supposed to be headed in that direction? Is Nigeria borrowing to invest in growth or borrowing to fund recurrent expenditure? And then how sustainable is debt when the large share of revenue goes into servicing loans?
Very interesting questions. For the first one, I will, the interesting thing about this, and I'm sure Professor Ken knows more than even me, is that in our own field, we normally agree to disagree. So it's normal, for us to agree or disagree on some of these things, I believe. I still stand on the grounds that what we are having is reduction in prices, and that reduction in price, we have discussed maybe about a year and a half in this program, that reduction is because of the window that was opened to import. And when you import a lot of food, items, and then the tendency is that other food items that they are not importing, and I'm sure Prof knows more than me, will also be impacted. And that is what happened to his cassava and the other things. But what was imported basically were rice and corn and all that, for feed mills and other things. So basically that's what happened, and that is what impact we are facing. And the average farmer in, say, Kaduna here that produces maize or produces rice or used to produce rice or maize or even yam or cassava actually lost substantially their capital. This is what has happened because this has been eroded because, again, we have provided employment to others, the farmers abroad, at zero duty. I stand totally, I want to know where are the inputs, which inputs are coming, no inputs are coming to the farmers, the real farmers. I don't know about cassava farmers because probably it's into cassava farming, but certainly farmers that are into rice, into corn, into other things that I am personally involved in, I know are not getting any input. So I don't think the minister is making or playing or performing any magic. In fact, I've read also, I've seen that they have imported some tractors. We are waiting to see what that will translate into. But that let's put that aside. Now let's look at the issue that you asked about pertaining to the debt. Again, what we read all over is we are inundated by debts all over. We hear about debts. I don't have anything against debt per se. In fact, debt can facilitate and promote growth if it is applied appropriately. I prefer when we are when we're taking debts, especially for infrastructure purposes, there's nothing wrong with that. But these days we are hearing all sorts of debts, and most of them foreign debts. And foreign denominated debts, the impact, of course, is that they have impact on debt servicing, not only debt servicing, but also on exchange rate, because we have to use whatever little we have to now pay on this debt and service these debts as time goes on. And I'm getting worried about it because even in the implementation of budgets, what we had in 2025, we were operating 2023 budget, 2024 budget, and towards the end, we started implementing the capital budget of 2025. We are confused. We don't understand what is happening, especially with regards to these borrowings that are happening left, right, and center. When the government came in and initiated the project, the largest capital project of Lagos-Calabar Expressway, nobody told anybody. We just heard that the contract has been signed, and when the contract was signed, nobody said how it was going to be funded. It was not even part of budget. It was subsequently now that we hear borrowings to support. Just this week, borrowing has been approved for $1.something billion to support part of it. That is even okay because it's infrastructure. But why should we be borrowing, for example, for administrative conveniences and packaging things and that? I mean, that is a concern. Another concern is that when subsidy was removed, the most important thing that was said of money will be freed, and there will be a lot of money available to government, And in fact, when the FAC allocation started, we saw that a quantum leap was there, obviously, in terms of how much was distributed between the 3 tiers of government. Now, we thought with that, in fact, at the beginning, what I know was that there was a lot of reserve because you cannot even distribute all of it because that will bring in a lot of inflation. But what did we see? What are we seeing? We are still seeing a lot of borrowings. And sincerely, we need to convince ourselves as to the necessity of these borrowings. That is my stance. Thank you.
It's the necessity of this borrowing. Professor Ken, we've talked about, food prices, and we also have to talk about climate shocks too, because climate change has sort of affected how things are done, and they are some of the major vulnerabilities, to inflation, as we all know. So how can that be controlled, and how important was the oil revenue to Nigeria's economy in 2025 as we try to diversify from oil to agriculture to micro businesses and all that? So how important was the oil revenue, to the Nigerian economy in 2025? Because if the oil revenue is on the high side, we don't need to go out borrowing, don't you think?
You're right. But let's compare like to like. You see, up until now, up until last 12 months, remember what our production volume was in crude, even with the very high prices that we had. But now that is heading to 1.8 and could stay there. Then the prices are going to come down. If you look at the projections for the whole of this year, next year, it's going to be between $52 to $58. Yes. It's going to come down. So that's why there's a big question mark on the hula balu going on the budget. That is a scam. All right. Now, in the case of the oil industry, what has happened is that you have to look at what impact Dangote has brought into the industry. He's projecting, he's already put 20 billion, and another 20 billion is coming by the next 3 years when production doubles and more investment going to phosphate. But what is significant is that he looks forward to a revenue, government revenue, from his operation of $20.1 billion. Government doesn't earn $20.1 billion a year. But that is one company promising that that's going to happen. He's going to go to a $100 billion turnover. At the moment, he's also raising, those only 2 items, polypropylene and fertilizer, $6.4 billion in revenue. So can you imagine? And he's going to capital market by next month now. He start going there. Look, heading to $200 billion in capital market capitalization. So our capital market has grown by over 40%, but to 98 trillion. When that hits, it will go to over 200 trillion. So you can see the impact. It will deepen the capital market. It will bring capital markets where you get long-term funding from. Not these things we are doing with banks here and money lenders. That's where you get a long-term financing to your capital industrialization scheme and capital. So that is where you're going to get to it. So there's a transformation that we are seeing in this area. And fuel, remember, 1,000 something naira to 699 naira, 739 in the pump. And it's going to get all over the place. Even NNPC and his group, they've reduced as well. So who is gaining? The citizens are gaining. They are getting the benefit of the price collapsing. It hasn't reflected so much on the transport. That's why the food inflation is seen, is still, you have issues around some food. Because the transport cost is still high. That thing hasn't diffused enough to bring down the price of, and I hear what Prof says, that there's still some importation of some food items. But I can tell you, we do not import gari from China. We don't import cassava. We are the ones exporting cassava to China. In fact, when minister called me last year, I was doing some lecture in Kano. He said, where are you? Come. I come there. He said, look, this cassava you are drying up and sending to China, stop. I want you to gari. I want to flood the country with gari. I stopped. I've lost a lot of money, but I had to do this. So,
Professor Ife, you know, just listening to you, I wish you could translate to more money in my pocket.
Exactly.
You know, to those who are watching, really. Because you speak about yourself, you speak about the fact that, well, you have connections, so if you like, relationship with the minister and all of that, but it's not the same for every Nigerian. I agree that you talk about the price of Gary and all of that coming down and everything, but in real terms, you want to rate the living standard or living condition of Nigerians. Away from transportation, housing hasn't come down, right? Power has gone up, right? These are, I mean, basics to live a comfortable life wherever it is that you find yourself. But, you know, when you talked about the stock exchange and you say, oh, well, it did good in 2025, talk about private investments. Did it really strengthen in 2025? You know, considering all the friendly reforms you say that you know, have been put in place, or it weakened, or they're still, you know, people are still being careful, you know, to invest.
Let's analyze the investment. Because the CBN has focused on price stability and had to hike inflation to suppress. Don't forget, the government came in to meet 33 trillion naira printed. Central banks print money under certain conditions. If there is a massive increase in productivity, assuming that the farm yield was 2 or 3 times more, you have a lot of yield, productivity. They're going to print some money to enable people to be able to buy. If some investor is bringing $100 billion into Nigeria, you carry out his dollar and send it to central bank, but then you have to print some naira for him to do the work that he has already brought 100. You understand? None of these were the conditions for the printing of the 33 trillion. They just printed it, which means you printed inflation. And so CBN had to start mopping that money up. And one of the instruments they use is to hike the rates and then do other things, many other things that they had to do. But there are some kind of but we still need $1 to stabilize the market. We need $1 desperately. So FDI ran away. Till today, we haven't seen it. FDI is foreign direct investment. That one ran away because it's very, very scared of structural issues like power supply, deficit, transportation costs, high costs, all the things that affect input that raise the price. So they're running away. They haven't come. We are looking for them. But there's portfolio investment. The one you say, the paper money, that one they were coming because they will borrow money at 2% abroad or even 3%. And they come and buy treasury bills here at 20%. You know, as long as the exchange rate is steady, they will take their money off. You understand? So they were coming. There were a lot of it. It was over 70%. So that was providing the cushion that we needed to have stability in the forex, because the oil money was playing silly bugger. Okay, so they suddenly had to get that moving. But now we are coming down like a ton of bricks on the oil money.
Yes.
Because I've already outlined to you how more dollars are going to be coming from Dangote's intervention and all of that. And you've seen the hula baloo around Dapman and Pengasson and NMDPRA, all that shenanigan. You've seen how that's sorting themselves out. Those are the comfort zones where they stayed and were telling you to look away, non-oil. Everybody singing and dancing non-oil because they were entrenched. Now the jury is out. And we have beginning to unravel that area, and we are seeing growth coming to the economy from that. So just give it another 3, 4 months, 6 months. You will see some stability. You see a lot more.
So do you think in 2025, the monetary policy and the fiscal policies, did they complement themselves, or they were at cross purposes?
They could do more. No, they have actually tried, though, to be honest with you. They have tried.
They've tried.
They've tried. So I can't knock fiscal policy because it used to be terrible. Because we had a situation over the last 10 years of what I call fiscal dominance over monetary policy. Is it not fiscal that told you to print dollars, to print naira? Central bank cannot start printing. No, it's the fiscal that said, I want naira. I want naira. Then they print it for it, and then you go and distribute. It's fiscal.
And overloading everybody with naira.
Is all fiscal.
Okay.
But there are many things that are happening on the fiscal. The only area that they have to sort out is this budgeting, because I think that Ministry of National Plan, he owes a huge apology to the president. It's an embarrassment. You know, they don't look at the fiscal law. There is a fiscal law called FRA 2007. They don't want to know what is written there. And then you are borrowing money, not for what you said, for investment, because everybody borrows money. The richest country in the world is America, where they borrow, they are owing 34
the highest
trillion.
borrowers here, yes. In
Their
the whole
GDP
world.
is 33. That their trade is 33. They are owing more than what they are getting.
But their inflation is very low.
It's
I
very
think
low.
4% or 2% or so.
Because of the output and all
Yes.
that. So the thing is, you said it, that is not producing the growth. The quality of the growth is what we are looking at. That growth is paper growth. It's not leading to, it's not inclusive. The MSMEs, that 42 million of them are scrambling to find lifeline with a capital. They can't get that. And then other things are squeezing them. And then one of the things that are squeezing them is what is coming from the budget.
Okay.
Because when you over budget, you create confusion and scramble. And people are scrambling. That's why people are all laying siege to the office of the finance. Is that what is causing the people asking for somebody's head?
Okay, you can say
Yes, and people, talking about people are, asking questions. Our viewers are sending in questions and we're expecting more. Let me take some so that I'll come to you with it. He said, why is it that our exchange rate is still remaining high? To a common man, the exchange rate was 470 naira per dollar before May 29, 2023. And he said, do you not think if the exchange rate comes down, will it not bring down inflation? This one didn't put a name. And another one said, in agricultural sector, there is a welcome development. Let FG do more in oil and gas sector. At least there should be reduction in pump price to ease the suffering of the masses. Good morning, gentlemen and ladies in the studio. And Engineer Bello Mohammed said, good morning and compliments of the season. Excellent discussions about the economic development. I hope the government is taking notes for appropriate implementation of the recommendation therein. The agricultural sector is still the major employer of labor. As such, the government needs to do more in tackling insecurity and corruption. These two monsters are the bane of our progress. My best wishes to the discussants, and special greetings to my NYC colleague in Abuja, 7880, Mr. Ken Ife.
Thank you.
Wow.
Yes,
Give me my love.
What year? 1978?
7880.
Yes.
Wow.
Amazing.
So can you respond to some of this?
That's
Doctor, where were you? Where were you? 1980.
Push me. Of the rather, I think it's a
He
good.
actually left his number for you. So let's get it.
I think it's an interesting contribution from the listener. That simply means virtually every Nigerian following Nigerian economy because
Yes.
it affects our pocket. And like I said earlier, there's a deflator that we must actually look at critically. Is that 1,400, 1,500 to $1. Until that actually gets, reduced to an extent, it's still a huge.
Do you see that happening in 2026?
Very, very well. Because if you look at a lot of things that we've been doing, and diaspora remittance, look at the foreign reserve, they are going up. That's it. And before it was the supply side problem. So now I think the supply side is getting better, and hopefully it will reflect. And like we said, those are indicators that we saw, especially macroeconomy. We are expecting that it will, if it is not eroded, because we cannot say anything about force majeure. We hope we will not see an act of God that will take that away. It's critical. But from all we are seeing, it's going to be a good one for Nigeria. But like we rightly said, until these things trickle down to Nigerians, and that's where we get to say yes. Actually, then government need to put consciousness into some of the shock absorbers, you see, that they are trying to put in place, like CNG. CNG is expected to have cushioned the issue of transportation, but up till now, we've not seen considerable, reflection of that area. That simply means that the investment in that area need to be double. Perhaps I think they should open it up more for private investors, because it's as if it's still government driven to an extent. Because if we don't see that, that will continue to take money from Nigerians' pocket. And the more the energy sector, power, the transportation keep taking money from our pocket, the more we believe that yes, the purchasing power is not there. Gari is cheap in the market, tomato is cheap in the market, but you don't have money. And that's why I'm talking about the demand side.
Purchasing power,
disposable income. These are the things that government need to look at critically. Then we need to salute the CBN, because at a point I saw them implementing a lot of thing to actually fight the inflation. Remember, we have the issue of cryptocurrency. That is the problem. We have to reduce the bureau de change to an extent. A lot of policy and implementation. I think they've actually tried, because we've seen the result in the issue of inflation. However, governments must continue to look at it from citizen perspective, and that's why I was talking about the subnational. Yes, there's a lot of money going to the subnational. So sometimes we need to look at it critically as well. What has actually helped? What is the impact on the life of Nigeria? Because Nigeria, as it is wired, we only believe it is federal government. But we must start looking at the state
and local governments. Yes.
And I also say this. I recall during the Okonjo-Iweala administration, Dr. Okonjo-Iweala, we used to see it published. This is amount going to so local government. This amount going to so that Nigeria can actually follow the money and perhaps see the implementation. And we must also talk about the fiscal performance of the federal government, like the Prof rightly said. I think there's a serious gap that we must look at critically, because if you look at the component of the budget, we have debt service, we have the recurrent, and we have the capital component of it. But if you recall, now that we are expecting our revenue around 35 trillion and we are budgeting about 58 trillion, where do we get that shortfall? We are going to borrow. So eventually, if there's a problem in that revenue dropped from 35 maybe to 15, what component of that budget suffered? Remember, debt service is an obligation. You just have to do it. Remember, the recurrent expenditure, by January 1, you must start, even though you have to go to CBN, ways and means to actually borrow money. But the component that benefits the entire Nigeria is the 26%, which is the capital expenditure that cater for social infrastructure like education, road, healthcare. So government must make sure that that component is implemented to an extent. Recall, the 2025 capital expenditures got started as at October. Now it is rolling over to, so that's area I think government president needs to do more, and the National Assembly, because when I listen to president, at a point I felt, doesn't mean the president is not in touch with what the budget, the finance is actually doing. And I also listen to the National Assembly. They are saying, henceforward, they are going to correct it, and what have you actually be doing? Because you have the right of oversight function. This budget comes to you, make the appropriation. You should have monitor and make sure, because Nigerians, the only thing we benefit from is the capital expenditure, and I think we must look at that area if we want Nigeria to gain, the benefit of these reforms that we are seeing.
Many thanks, Dr. Elias. We need to pause now for a break. When we come back, I have some messages. I'm sure you have some more.
Yeah, I have some that came in.
The number is on the screen, by the way, so feel free to send in your comments, questions, or suggestions as the conversation continues after this short break. Stay with us. Many thanks for staying with us. It's still Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the NTA. Our conversation is on economic developments in 2025. Our guests are still very much with us, and of course we have some messages. As we said before we went on that break, we're still open to receive your comments, your questions, our suggestions, of course, as we move forward into 2026. All right, Professor Ango, I'd like you to pay attention to some of these comments or questions I'm going to read out because we're coming to you, to give your responses to them. This one says, "Good morning, Nigerians. Professor Ken is being factual. The economy is green in 2025. Here in Maiduguri, a 50 kg bag of beans is as low as 25,000 naira compared to 100,000 naira plus in 2024. That's coming from Sheriff from Maiduguri. Akeju Olagbaju, the 2025 economy was to be driven by the budget and related reforms. In 2025, about 17.3% was released. Against this poor budget performance, how sure are these figures on growth indices? The assessment should be objective and less of rhetoric." Another one says, "Prices of foodstuff are dropping, but fertilizer and pesticide prices are on the increase. How will government reconcile this?" That's coming from Magaji Bako Kala. Finally, this one says, "Hi, please, what is the government doing to see that prices of other stuff, medicine, transport, fertilizer, insecticides, and farm implements are dropped or subsidized?" That's Adamu from Boji. All right, Professor Ango, your quick comments to some of these Well, these are basically comments, but I'd like to hear your thoughts about them.
The comments are in order, especially one of the commentators said something about price of beans being 25,000 as against 100 and something thousand last year or some years back. That is true, you know. And like I said, government did not import, I think, beans, but they imported, or they allowed for importation of rice and importation of other wheat and other things. And you know, the alternatives, these are alternatives since these are foodstuffs. I mean, and that's what impacted on the prices. And like we said earlier, you know, these had direct impact because these were duty free. Meanwhile, the inputs, like again was said by one of the commentators, the inputs, especially fertilizer, which is number one, the prices have increased, in fact, substantially from in the last 1 year, 2 years. The price of NPK fertilizer now is 60, 70,000, some category even up to 80,000. Whereas the price of corn, I mean maize, or maybe rice is 25,000 or thereabout. So basically, you need to sell 3-4 bags of maize, you know, to be able to afford one fertilizer. This is a reality. That's why I'm saying I don't understand what magic the Minister of Agri is performing, that the prices of these things did not happen. And I think also we need to take into context something that is important. When a government is in power, that is the time to critique that government so that they can do better. When a government is out of power, if they have done something that is good, we should also acknowledge it. We have come from a point in this country where we are 90% dependent on imported rice. But that was reversed by the previous government. And we're not acknowledging that. You know, and that brought out a lot of industries and a lot of manufacturing towards that sector. So we should also encourage this current government by critiquing it so that they can do better. They can do better in terms of inputs. Inputs are high as it is. In fact, the average farmer in Nigeria today, the average farmer is at least 50% or lower than what he was 5 years or 3 years ago. So basically what that means is that that is why probably there is a high increase in poverty level, about now 50% or more at poverty level, about 139 million from the latest I've seen. And because majority of people are farmers, and that is having direct impact. It's good for prices of foodstuff to come down, but the best thing is for inputs to be lower so that these farmers are operating also, at least they are covering their cost if they are not making losses. Right now they are making losses, and if they are making losses, it means what we are saying basically, we can do away with food security, we will always have food to import, we know we can import from anywhere in the world, and then we'll be happy with it. And I think that is a dangerous thing for a nation to want to put itself in. I believe we need to encourage farmers by making sure inputs are available to the farmer. You know, yes, there were a lot of issues with anchor borrowers and all that, but it helped. Even though, I mean, it was mismanaged in some areas, but it helped. And then finally, let me also say that the solution, probably, we as Nigerians, we should look for solutions from our entrepreneurs, obviously. We're going to see a lot of solutions if our entrepreneurs will put on their enterprising gear, I mean, and then work. Because what is happening with Dangote, if it happens with so many others, then it means even the exchange rate, which is now a major issue. Somebody said 450 naira was to a dollar was what was happening before 2023, and now we're saying we're even seeing stability, and it's I mean 3 times, 4 times more. But with what Dangote is doing, and if others do that, and like what Prof said, if we become maybe the processing unit, you know, of Africa in terms of petroleum or petrochemicals, then those prices will naturally, that is, the exchange rates will naturally come down. And I think that is the solution. We should look for solutions from entrepreneurs rather than always looking at government and seeing government will do something for us. And then finally, the issue of subnationals. And I think, you know, if you look at the FAC, the monthly allocations of funds from the Federation account, you see that always, if you add the state allocation to the local government allocation, to the states that are having the 13% derivation together, they are much more than the federal. But in reality, our attention is always on the federal. And I believe if the local governments alone will deploy what is said to be allocated to them, I will see a lot of differences. Because on the average now, we have reached almost a point whereby a local government gets about 500 million per month. And that, for a local area, will make significant difference if it's allowed to work the way it should.
To work the way it should, Professor Ango. Professor Ken, whenever we have conversations like this, the issue of, state actors come into play, the subnational, the local government, because most of these small businesses are situated in the states and the local governments and, manufacturing also. So we cannot rule out, the power sector itself, because without power, no business can thrive. So how has energy, costs, affected, productivity and expansion plans of this manufacturing, small business, SMEs, and tech especially? Because we are thinking of diversifying from oil, and we're encouraging people to go into business. But like you said, the exchange rate is an issue. The conducive environment for businesses is almost not there. And manufacturing sector has almost collapsed, because you said, foreign direct investment has sort of disappeared. So how can we bring all these things on board to ensure that the power sector itself is given to the people so that they can expand their business and make more money and, sort of depend less on government, and, employment doors will be open too?
The power pain is very excruciating.
It is.
And why why it's more pivotal is because the agenda is about industrialization. And you can't have industrialization without power. For you to tackle import dependency, you only tackle it by industrialization, so that you can now have effective backward integration and import substitution. So you can't move an inch. And Nigerian stock of infrastructure is only 30%. If you compare it to South Africa, it's 80%. So South Africans can decide not to build any more power because they have 40 times more power than Nigeria per capita. What I mean, we have 4 times their population. We are glorifying on 5,000 megawatts, but they have 58,000 megawatts. So when you look at 4 times population and 58 times, it's 40 times more. So they are 40 times more power than us. So they can afford to just... So when they are fighting about power, it's all because of the luxury, how many more air conditioners are coming. But our own is chronic. And have you said that? You see, the president has delivered Supreme Court judgment to the local authorities. Implement it now, the financial ones, so that they can start getting their money. No, because unless they start getting their money, you cannot blame them on not performing their role very well, because they are the ones when it comes to agriculture. It's actually the local governments that sit on the lands that they can actually do something with their money. The state government is the next level, because all the businesses run to state government. They are closer to them, and then of course they are the ones that tax left, right, and center. So we need to make sure these people must get their money, and whatever it takes. And I've heard the president say that, if you guys have given you time, you turn to the governors, I'm now going to write the executive order. Let it be your announcement in 1st of January.
All right, many thanks, Professor.
We have to move the country. He has the courage. Let him do it. And ministers that are not performing, move them to other ministries now, and then bring young boys there to make things happen.
Okay. Many thanks, Prof, for your recommendations. I hope the President, although out of the country, I'm sure his aides are listening to you, and we'll pick 1 or 2 of these recommendations. But as we begin to round off the conversation, Dr. Elias, I'd like you to speak about a particular policy reform you think did not work in 2025. And talking about those that worked, are they credible enough to anchor long-term improvements in the economy and also better the lives of Nigerians?
Right. I think it's a tough one. the fact is that, we've seen different policy reform, and I think we should have come earlier, even before now. So thanks to President for the courage to actually bring about those policies, even though the pain is excruciating, it's really tell, because what we should have done 10, 20 years back, you actually are implementing them now. So I think the most one that affects Nigeria, we must continue to say it, is the first subsidy removal. Now, the first subsidy removal pain is still with Nigerians until, we get to see how we can cushion it. And that's why I was talking about CNG implementation. Very good idea. Do you know I converted my car too? So that I can actually benefit from it. For you to know that, if you have to assess yourself as human, what is actually taking the money away from my pocket? So by the time you assess yourself, you now look at, okay, it's much more of the consuming what you consume. So for me, I think they need to do more in that area to domesticate it more. It shouldn't be a federal government affair. It should also be subnational affairs. They should also look at it critically. But the one that I see more, that I hope it will be reduced considerably in 2026, is the issue of MPR. MPR means a lot to businessmen. Be it manufacturing or, we need capital to do business. And for you to get capital to do business, you need to go to bank to actually borrow. So if the MPR is actually high, even though, we don't want them to play with the corridor this time around, we have to come down considerably so that Nigerian can actually say, yes, I can actually go, get money, get a loan from banks, do business, and actually return. And government also must also consider the contractors too in this case, because remember, when you do capital projects, when you pay contractors, the public get the money trickle down to where it's supposed to get to, and you see things getting better. So I think we should do more in terms of NPR, and they should be able to also pay our contractors.
Okay, thank you. Professor Isha Ango, as we begin to round up, we would like your own assessment of what would be a successful Nigerian economy. What would look like in 2026? We want a bigger picture there.
Let's hope that we'll have an economy that will encourage local producers, be they manufacturers or farmers, to produce. Let it be an economy that will encourage others, so that we become, we have some food security in the country. And let there be an economy that is not that is coming out with reforms, desirable reforms certainly, but there's the reforms that are cushioned so that their impact on the pocket of the average Nigerian is manageable. I've seen here in Kaduna a community, an estate, that refused to be branded Band A, by the power supply company here. Because they realize that, they are not just working just to pay for electricity. I know what I pay for electricity, and if I put that side by side with what I pay for fuel, in a month, it's more than my so-called salary. So basically, reforms should come with human face. Reforms should come with some kind of cushion, so that as we are reforming, we reform in stages and in a way that people can absorb it. What's the use of reform when there is nobody available to enjoy those reforms? We should not reform just to satisfy certain powers outside of Nigeria. We should reform for Nigerians. We should reform with the mindset that we are trying to improve the system. And we should reform in a way that will be clear-cut and clean. I read something about 7 trillion in subsidy from NNPC. A reform should be complete, and when it is complete, there shouldn't be any hidden subsidies that are there, and then people will come and tell us stories afterwards. This is what we hope to see in 2026.
Many thanks, Professor Ango. If you're complaining about your salary, I'm wondering what I should be saying. Because, you're a professor. A professor. Anyways, Prof, I hope 2026 will be better. Professor, I'm sure you don't share the same sentiment with Professor Ango. You're a professor in a different, you profess in different aspects, including agriculture. So, of course, I hope that you teach us some of the things that you know, just so that we can also improve our income in 2026. But of course, I'd like to hear your final words as we round up this conversation now. What would be your recommendation in terms of policies that you would like to see in 2026, just so that we can be better off? And then looking at the path that we are on at the moment, looking at the current fundamentals, would you say that this economy is headed for a sustainable path or a fragile one?
No, it's sustainable. Actually, I have to tell you that. But I'd like to connect with what you said. Very interesting thing you said, actually, on the high NPR rate. It needs to be coming down now. It needs to. But it may not be at the speed at which it will make major difference, because the monetary policy rate is one thing. There is cash reserve ratio that is gone 50%. Yeah. There's liquidity ratio that is 30%. Between the two of them, 80%. Banks have only a small headroom of 20%. So much of that deduction may not even make, the banks don't have the money to lend. And then even at those rates, private sector are not even prepared to borrow at those rates, some of them. What should the problem that they are being sidetracked by the treasury bills? The domestic borrowing is forcing them to take whatever money they have to run to safety, to go and invest it to get 18% than to even do the business. So this budget area is causing what I call, that is the one that is causing the biggest problem to the private sector. Because go and listen to those who are doing contract. They borrow money to give the upfront money. They borrow money to go and do the work. And then they borrow money to sit alive and wait for to be paid. So that is where the problem is. That's why I'm saying the government, the president should turn the searchlight there, because that is where what is killing the economy. Crowding out private sector investment, pushing them over there, rather than go to multilateral loans where you can get it at 2% and then pay. So, that's the area, the biggest Achilles heel for this government.
It's not just contractors.
For this government, it's not just what is going on in this.
It's not just contractors that are borrowing money to sit and be alive until things get better. I mean, Dr. Ilyas.
Yes, let's have your final words. Yeah.
Right, like you rightly said, I think I want to see a different budget implementation in 2026. It's still in the pipeline. I want to charge our president, the National Assembly, to make sure that they have a budget that we can actually follow from January to December. I want to see them implementing the components that actually affect the generality of Nigeria, which is about social infrastructure. So that will be, we'll be so happy to see that happen. I want the president to be in charge so that we can actually see.
All right, because of time, we cannot go to Professor Ango.
I believe somebody sent one. Let me read it before we will let you go. He said, food item prices is dropping at the detriment of the local farmers because the cost of farming input is still high, thus discouraging and sending small farmers from production, particularly dry season farmers. R. Wycliffe sent in this message.
Professor, I didn't hear your policy recommendation for 2026.
Well, my policy recommendation is to sort out the budget and economic plan, because we haven't had any economic planning for 3 years. Nothing. Neither even the new one for 2026 to 20, nothing. Nothing. And we are entering 2026 next week.
Such a gloomy picture.
Professor Ken Ife, economic policy expert, thank you so much for being our guest.
My pleasure.
Thank you for sharing your insights. Of course, we look forward to having you in 2026. Many more conversations to have ahead. And of course, Dr. Aliyu Ilyas, you need to look for your classmates too. I mean, we need to know what year.
It will be in 70s. It will be in 2000.
2000? You are almost a Gen Z. Thank you so much. An economist, thank you for being our guest. We appreciate you. Professor Yeshua Ango, Deputy Vice Chancellor Academics, Kaduna State University, and Professor of Finance and Entrepreneurship. You joined us from our Kaduna studio. We look forward to having you in 2026. Thank you so much for being our guest all through the year. And, of course, we're looking forward to better income, better salary in 2026
and better reforms.
And better reforms, of course.
Well, that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. Thank you so much for your time. On behalf of the production crew, I am Jumo Yusuf.
I'm Henry John, never locked on the NTA. A few hours to the end of the year 2025. Wishing you the very best in 2026, of course.